In June of 2002, 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart was abducted in the middle of the night from her Salt Lake City bedroom. Elizabeth was the most unlikely of victims in a crime that seemed without motive. Her abduction was so bizarre and unique a case that it transfixed America.
We gathered together as a family, as we always do, and had our evening prayer together, and put the kids in bed. I kissed the girls goodnight, and just were exhausted, and dropped off. The next thing I remember after going to sleep was Mary Catherine coming around the bed to Lois's side and saying, "Mom, somebody's taken Elizabeth." And, I'm sitting there in bed, I'm thinking, she's had a bad nightmare. Mary Catherine remained in the room with Lois. As I went from room to room checking, it became more and more of a reality that, she was not here. I came down the steps, looked through my office, went into our family room. She was not there. And it really erupted when Lois came down the stairs and turned on the lights in our kitchen and saw the screen cut. Mary Catherine had come down and said, "You're not going to find her. A man's taken her." And you just can't even imagine what was Elizabeth going through. Lois was yelling, "Call 911," and that was the first thing that happened.
When I arrived, the neighborhood was pretty much sealed off. We did a quick walk around, cursory look at the kitchen area window, and inside the bedroom where the abduction had taken place. There are a number of ways that somebody could have gotten into the home, anybody that was determined. The window's fairly high off the ground. For someone to climb through the window, they would have not only had to step up on the seat of the chair, they would have had to step up on the back of the chair just to make the cuts in the screen. If you have the plane of the window, then the window would open like this and kind of slide to the middle, and it's not a real wide window. So it left 12 or so inches that you could actually squeeze through.
When we got that call in the middle of the night, I could kind of tell that, something bad had happened, and Edward told us the story, and it's just, panic. Someone's taken Elizabeth with a gun, and, get down here. It was just it's just this sick, terrible feeling. It just struck your heart that this is the worst thing that could ever happen.
I remember walking in to the house and seeing Lois sitting on that couch, and it was just horrifying. I mean, she was just wailing, catatonic. It was just, this nightmare is real.
The Smarts' home had not been immediately sealed by the police, and all forensic clues to the abductor were contaminated. But there was one witness to the crime, Elizabeth's younger sister, who shared her bed, 9-year-old Mary Catherine.
Mary Catherine, right from day one, was very consistent in the account that she gave us. She talked about being awake, hearing Elizabeth up. There was conversation, including threats from the perpetrator to Elizabeth, threats against the family and against her.
The guy said, "Be quiet. If you scream, I'll shoot you, but if you don't, I won't harm you."
Did his voice sound familiar to you?
Yeah.
Can you tell me where you've heard that before?
No, I can't remember.
Mary Catherine mentioned that the voice was familiar to her. She thought she'd heard it before, although she was not able to say where for sure, but it seemed familiar, but not a whole lot more that we could go on.
I couldn't imagine. I couldn't even fathom who would want her, who would take her, who would. I didn't really feel like I had any enemies. I didn't feel like there was anyone out there that would want to, that I knew of, that I could. It was the farthest thing from my mind.
When you're missing a young 14-year-old girl, you certainly have to consider a sex crime as a motive. Elizabeth had to have been a chosen victim, very specifically targeted by her abductor.
Until that terrible night, the Smarts had led a privileged and happy life.
The Smart family are people of faith, and they want to be good people. They want to live what they think they should be to be a good community member and a good Mormon church member. They wanted Elizabeth to sort of set an example for her siblings, younger siblings, which she did. So they invested a lot in her, encouraging her to do what's right, encouraging her to live the teachings of the church. She was had a happy disposition, and she was a believer. She had faith.
She just really was kind of the pride and joy, I think, of Edward and Lois. She was so perfect. At 14 years old, she wasn't interested in boys. She was interested in the harp and horses.
A lot of people sometimes ask us if we're sisters or even twins once in a while. Sometimes when I go down to their house, they've got a gym in their basement. We like to just play dumb games. They have these really big bouncy balls, probably about 2 feet in diameter. We like to hold them, and we call it sumo wrestlers, and we run into each other with the balls.
It was apparent pretty early on that she had a real low rating as a victim profile. She didn't hang out in front of the mall. She was not an active chat room participant on the internet. She was not hanging out with a boyfriend. She didn't participate in the kinds of things that would make her a likely victim. And she didn't have the kinds of conflicts even in the home and those kind of things that would make her run away or even stage something like this.
Everyone, it's 7:27, and we have a major story breaking at this hour. A 14-year-old girl kidnapped from her home by an intruder during the night in the Federal Heights area.
Elizabeth, if you're out there, we're doing everything we possibly can to help you. We love you. We want you to come home safely to us.
With every hour, the chance of finding Elizabeth alive was decreasing. Ed's oldest brother, Tom, a news photographer, took charge.
I didn't want to wait a week later to find out whether the person down the street who, may have, whoever it was, did it or not. I mean, you have a sense of urgency that's immediate. The press is your friend in this situation. We need to get out there. And we did, and that all went out on the 10 o'clock news.
You're watching KSL-5. This is the #1 Eyewitness News Special Report.
We begin today with the statewide alert for the missing girl and the man who took her.
Now, the kidnapping happened around 2 o'clock this morning, again, as we said, in the Salt Lake Federal Heights area. Abducted from her bedroom at gunpoint. And as Terry said,
what the Smart family did was they just said, this is who she is. And all of the photographs and the video clips and everything. Elizabeth was an angelic little girl who'd been kidnapped. And she really was. She was this innocent, bright-eyed, obedient girl who played the harp. She became a symbol of, I think, innocence and a victim.
She doesn't do anything to anyone, and there's no reason that you should have her. Please let her go, please.
Tom rallied the family that first night, to go in front of those cameras and plead with the community to come out and help. Every minute counts, every second counted, and everybody knew that, and the response the next day was just phenomenal. At 7:30, we started having searchers showing up. I brought about 450 volunteer registration forms. At 10 o'clock, I had someone from the registration desk come up to me and say, we're out of forms. By the end of the day, the count was up to close to 1,800 searchers that had come through the center.
The support and the love of the community were so great and everything, and I really, it seemed to become bigger than all of us in a way. It was just incredible. The sacrifices that everybody made.
So anybody who has a car, raise their hand.
Everybody could relate to a teenage girl being snatched from her bedroom in the middle of the night. That's everyone's kind of personal nightmare. And if it could happen to these people where they had a security system and where they're in an area that doesn't typically have a lot of crime, that could happen to anyone.
The trauma of Elizabeth's abduction was too much for her father. He collapsed and was taken into hospital.
And I couldn't stop thinking about Lois and Elizabeth and the family and where I was and what was happening. I felt like my life was coming apart at the seams. And they gave me a blessing. And I felt the Lord speak to me and say, you know, you've got to get up. You've got to go home. You've got to go forward.
We appreciate so much what you've done. It's so overwhelming to see. They told me people were here, but it's overwhelming.
We brought Edward and Lois down to see the amazing things that were going on down at that search center, and they were completely overwhelmed by it.
It was almost like it gave them strength. The community gave them strength to continue on when they saw the effort that was going on. It was just incredible.